Well, thank you for being here, and I'm pleased and proud to speak about my father, Charles Franklin Martell. He came from New York State and moved to North Dakota, worked on his uncle's ranch, his Uncle Nohle. He took the train from New York to Trenton, thank you, to Trenton. Then he took the stagecoach from Trenton to Cartwright and then walked over the hill to where his uncle's ranch was. He homesteaded in the early 1900s, started out like most homesteaders with nothing. He built the ranch up to a very profitable level so that he was able to contribute to the area. He was known as a man that knew horses and cattle. People would go to him if they needed help with their cattle and didn't want to go to a vet. He was known for his generosity. He was a quiet man. He didn't talk much, but he loved that community. His heart, mind, and soul was in North Dakota, and he loved it. He donated to the local churches. He laughed because he donated to the new church in Watford City, not so new now, but 40 years ago it was new. And he laughed because they had a big plaque on the confessional, and he always wondered why they put the plaque on the confessional, but that's where it was. And he supported the with the funds that he was able to raise from the ranch, supported the home on the range. He was known for helping everybody. If there was somebody that was in need during the dry years, he would give them hay. So he was just kind of a pillar of the community. Never got into politics. Politics didn't interest him, but he did help, or he did start the grazing association in the area. As a kid, besides the normal chores that we did on the ranch, getting the cattle in at branding time, getting the eggs, milking cows, getting the cows in to be milked. My other chore was to circulate around the community with petitions, because he always wanted to keep that train running through Charbonneau and the elevator and the post office. And he kept that going till the day that, I think after he died, they finally closed everything down. But he did that, and I have to be proud to say that I helped, because I went around with the petitions. Other than that, there's so many things about him that I could tell you, and I just could go on and on forever, but I won't.
Well, I'm following Jamie, and I will try not to go on and on and on, but I can't promise a lot.
30 minutes.
Anyway, yes, CF happens to be my grandfather, and obviously I'm supporting his nomination because he's my grandfather, but it goes way beyond that, because as a little girl, I really didn't know all the things that he accomplished. I have my memories, of course, but they're not really relating to what he did and who he was. And it really wasn't until after he and my father died that I began to realize all those types of things. I want to talk a little bit about that first, so please bear with me. My grandfather died when I was 10. And my father died just 3 years later when I was 13. And it is tragic to lose one's father at such a young age, and it definitely was. But it also changed the lives of the Martell family from the course that they thought they were going to be on, the whole family. My father, his dream was to take over that ranch, to run the Martell ranch. When he grew up on, he loved North Dakota, he loved McKenzie County, and that's where he wanted to be. And that's where I wanted to be. And so he was back in North Dakota making all those final arrangements you have to make after his father died to take over that ranch. And he got home from that business trip and he died that night. And so that changed everything. But what he did do in my 13 years of life was instill in me a love of North Dakota, my roots and my heritage, because my father was so proud of North Dakota, and he loved his roots and heritage. And he got that from his father, who came from New York for a summer harvesting and decided that this is where he wanted to be. So before he went back home for the winter, he filed under that Homestead Act, and he came back to North Dakota the next year for good. And so that wasn't the end of the Martells in North Dakota, because I would come back all the time, as my Aunt Janie did. And every time I was back and I'd go around with my friends, I'd be introduced. And that always brought a story, it always brought a reminiscence. And it was then that I started to realize everything that my grandfather had accomplished. And so I'm appealing to you on that basis, not on the little girl, remembered her grandfather, which of course I do, but on all that he accomplished. And Janie mentioned that he came from New York, sorry. You can tell I'm a little nervous. Worked for his uncles, did that cowboying, and decided to stay. He called it cowboying. And even when he was in New York, I think he had that love of the Western culture, because I found this story when I was doing my research about how he'd heard those dairy cows that on the dairy farm that he lived on top of a horse. And that was kind of a spectacle back then, because that's just not what you did. He started with horses. Eventually he moved into cattle as the horse markets, faded and faltered. But in the beginning, he was really known for horse camp and all the work that he did out there, out in the Badlands. Back in the early days of this organization, one of your original trustees was named Manfred Singleness. Some of you may remember him. I know it's been quite a while. And when he died, he was actually working on a nomination for my grandfather, but he never got that accomplished. So I'm sure I missed a lot of stuff, because there's really a lot to say about him, but there's a lot of people yet to talk, so I'll just kind of leave it at that. But I'll be around, and I would love to share stories if anybody was interested. So I thank you for your time, and I do hope that you'll consider him. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else for Charles Martell?
Hello, my name is Patricia Rao from Sidney, Montana, and my sister Cynthia Vitt from Fairview, Montana, and we're here on behalf of C.F. Martell as well, although our acquaintance with the Martell family continues on over all these years, but we were just youngsters growing up on that ranch. My father, Matt Koch, began working for Charles Martell in the late 40s, and it was in 1953 that he moved our family onto the place and worked there throughout the next 20 years. He moved, my parents moved on there with my brother and sister in 1953, and a couple years later I was born, so that was my home for the next 16 years, and I still consider that today the home that we were raised on. And as children, we probably didn't learn to appreciate, just took for granted where we were. And now when we go back there and think about all the history and the accomplishments that Mr. Martell, as known to us, did, we really appreciate where we were raised. And Lloyd Lester also, who is in the audience today, began working there as a young man and worked there for many years. And I know he has many stories to tell, where just as children, that's just where we played and had lots of room to roam throughout the years. And I'm proud of the fact that even to this day, we stay in very close contact with the Martell family, Mary Pat and Dora Jane and their family, and keep in touch throughout the years, seeing each other on a regular basis and just reminisce and share the good times we had. But like I say, I don't think I realized until later on the accomplishments, and we're proud of the fact that what he did through all those hard times in those early 1900s, what he accomplished as far as with the Grazing Association and with the scholarships and the the donations to for the Sentinel Butte, the home on the range for boys, what all that has done, and it still leaves a legacy that lives on to this day for many youth that are furthering their education in whatever way. So it's something that we're very honored of, and we're very proud of the fact that he's been nominated into the Cowboy Hall of Fame. Thank you.
And I would just like to add that our 91-year-old mother, who is living in Sydney, Montana at the time, wanted to extend her very high recommendation for Mr. Martell, as we always called him, to be considered for nomination into the North Dakota Cowboy Hall of Fame. She said she wished she could be here, but I'm just relaying this message for her because she lived on the ranch with my dad working there, with our dad working there for about 20 years, and kept reminding us how lucky we were to grow up on the Martell Ranch, that it really was a special, unique situation. Like as Patricia mentioned, we didn't really realize until we got older that it really was a great place to grow up, and the relationship we have with the family is very special, and that we are very proud of the fact that he's a nominee, and really hope that he makes it into the Cowboy Hall of Fame for all of his accomplishments. Thank you for your consideration.